Tonight, the lights in the houses up your street are going out one by one. The clock has slowed, the hour has grown quiet, and whatever the day asked of you, the day is no longer asking. There is a village in the Gospel of John called Bethany, a small house where two sisters had been weeping 4 long days, a tomb sealed with a heavy stone, and a voice that walked the long road to that village and spoke a single name into the silence. That same voice is in this room, in this hour, speaking still, speaking over you now. If these slow evenings give you something the day cannot, subscribe so this channel finds you again on the next quiet night. And if a name is resting on your heart, leave it in the comments below. This community lifts everyone before the Lord. Now let your shoulders settle. Let your jaw go soft. Let the breath you have been holding without knowing finally come loose. Breathe in, slowly, deeply, hold it, and let it out as a long sigh. The kind of sigh someone gives when they have finally come to rest. Heavenly Father, we come to you now as the night falls gently over this world, as the lights go off, one by one, in houses up and down the street, as the phone goes quiet, as the kitchen grows still. We come with tired hands, Lord, tired hearts, minds that have carried more today than they were ever meant to carry alone. And we remember tonight what you did in Bethany. We remember how word was sent to Jesus. Lord, he whom thou lovest is sick. We remember how Mary and Martha waited, how they sat by their brother's side, how they watched the hours pass, and how the silence from heaven felt in those hours almost unbearable. Lord, some of us know that silence. We have sent word to you with everything in us. We have prayed at bedsides. We have wept in hospital hallways. We have waited by the phone. We have sat in the dark in the early hours of the morning and felt the weight of not knowing. Meet us there tonight, Lord, not with easy answers, but with your presence. The same presence that walked the road to Bethany, the same presence that wept at the tomb of a friend, the same presence that looked into what the world called finished and called it by name. Tonight speak over every sleepless fear, over every grief that has not yet found its words, over every heart in this room that is waiting for something they dare not stop hoping for. Let your peace, which passeth all understanding, guard our hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Let us rest in you, Father, as children rest in the arms of the one who loves them most. And when morning comes, let us rise knowing that you are here, that you never left, that you are the God who enters our sorrow, not the God who stands outside it. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who wept and who raised and who lives forevermore. Amen. Be still, the Lord is near. Let the quiet of this hour rest upon you like a hand laid gently on your shoulder. He is here, in this room, in this breath. Breathe in his peace, slowly, through your nose. Hold it a moment, and breathe out every burden that still clings to you from the day. Long and full, once more, draw in the breath he gives, the breath that has been yours since he first formed you. And let every anxious thought leave with this breath. Let it go. There is nothing to hold tonight, nothing to solve. He holds it all. Let your body rest in his presence now, your hands open, your shoulders low, every weight laid at his feet. Be still and know that he is God. You are not alone in this darkness. The Lord is in his holy place, and he is watching over you. Now, let his word carry you. We turn to the Gospel of John, chapter 11. There was a family in Bethany, a brother and his 2 sisters, Lazarus and Martha and Mary. They were not strangers to Jesus. John tells us plainly, with a tenderness rare even in Scripture. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. This was not a family Jesus had visited once on his way through. This was a household he knew, a table he had sat at, a fire he had rested near after long days of teaching. There was something in that home that was simply familiar to him. the kind of familiar that does not need to explain itself. We do not know what Lazarus looked like. We do not know the sound of his voice or the kind of man he was in the way the world measures men. But we know this: he was loved. He was the kind of loved where the love does not stay abstract. It has a name. It has a face. It has a room in your heart with his name on the door. And then he fell ill. Before any of that, there was simply the house, a house that knew how to receive people. Martha would have made sure of it. If you had arrived at that door in Bethany on an ordinary evening, before any of this had happened, you would have been met by someone who already had something warm on the table and had already thought about where you would sit. That was Martha, not performing hospitality, living it. The way some people carry a gift so naturally that they do not even know they are carrying it. She noticed what a room needed. She noticed when a cup was empty, and when a fire was low, and when a guest had gone quiet, in the way that meant they needed someone to ask how they really were. And Mary was the one who made a room feel different, just by being present in it. Not because she said a great deal, but because she was entirely there. The kind of present that most of us spend our whole lives trying to learn and never quite manage. When Mary sat near you, you felt that what you were saying mattered. Not because she was performing attention, but because she genuinely could not do anything else. Her attention was not rationed out in small portions. It was simply given. All at once. Whatever she was doing, she was entirely doing it. And then there was Lazarus. The gospel does not give us much of Lazarus before the tomb, but there is something in the way John writes about him that tells us everything we need to know about the kind of man he was. He was the kind of man whose absence, when it came, was immediately felt by every person in the room, not because he had been the loudest voice, but because he had been the steady one, the one who had been there so reliably for so long that his presence had become part of the texture of the household, the way a piece of furniture that has been in the right place for years becomes invisible until the day it is gone, and suddenly the room does not make sense anymore. That is what Lazarus was, the thing that made the room make sense. Jesus knew all of this. He had sat in that house. He had eaten at that table. He had been folded into the particular rhythm of that particular family, the way a guest becomes part of the household when the household is generous enough and the guest is attentive enough to notice what he has been given. He knew the sound of Martha's movement between the kitchen and the main room. He knew the quality of Mary's stillness. He knew what it felt like to sit with Lazarus in the easy silence that only exists between people who do not need to fill every moment with words. This was not a house he had visited once and remembered fondly. This was a house that was, in some ordinary and irreplaceable way, his. And into that house, without announcement, without preparation, without the courtesy of giving anyone time to brace themselves, illness came. It came the way these things always come, not announced, not invited. One day the house was ordinary, and then it was not. Martha moving too quickly between rooms, Mary quiet in a way that was not peaceful, and Lazarus, who had been so simply present, suddenly requiring all their attention just to remain. Word was sent to Jesus. The message itself is one of the most human sentences in all the Gospels. Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. That was all. No demand, no instruction, no theology pressed into the despatch. Just the plain and aching fact of it. The one you love is sick. And Jesus heard it. He received the word from the messenger. He held what had been said. And John tells us something that must have startled the disciples who were standing nearby. When Jesus heard that, he said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby." And then he stayed where he was 2 more days. This is the part of the story that is hardest to sit with, not because it is confusing, but because it is so familiar. Because most of us have been in that waiting. Most of us have sent word and felt in the silence that followed that something must have gone wrong, that the message did not arrive, that we were not heard. But John is careful here. There is a particular kind of silence that is harder to bear than noise. It is the silence that comes after you have sent your most honest prayer, and the hours continue to pass, and nothing changes, and the room remains exactly as it was when you knelt down. Martha and Mary knew that silence. They had sent the most direct message they could send. They had not dressed it up. They had not added theological qualifications or careful caveats about submitting to God's will. They had simply said, "The one you love is sick. Come." And the messenger had gone. We do not know exactly what those 2 days held for the sisters in Bethany. The gospel is quiet on that point, and mercifully so. But we can recognize the shape of it, because most of us have spent time inside some version of those 2 days. Perhaps not 2 calendar days, perhaps 2 months, perhaps 2 years, perhaps something that has stretched so long that we stopped counting and simply began to call it the condition of our lives. The season of having prayed and not yet received what we prayed for. The season of having sent word and hearing nothing back. Some of us prayed for a body to be healed and watched it decline instead. Some of us carried a name to God every morning for so long that the praying of that name became almost indistinguishable from breathing. And still the healing did not come the way we asked. And still the phone did not ring with the news we were waiting for. And still the door of the room we had been watching stayed closed. And in the small hours of those long nights, something in us began to wonder, quietly and with some shame, whether the message had arrived at all, whether we had been heard. But John is careful here. He does not let us carry that shame without correcting it. He places the declaration of love before the account of the delay. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. That sentence comes first, before the messenger, before the waiting, before the 2 days. The love is established before the silence begins, so that when the silence comes, we know what to set it against. The silence is inside the love, not outside it, not instead of it. It is held by the same hands that held Lazarus by name. This is one of the hardest things in all of Scripture to receive, because it asks us to hold 2 things at once that do not feel as though they belong together: the love and the delay, the knowing and the waiting, the message received and the answer not yet come. Our ordinary logic says that if the love were real, the response would be immediate, that if he heard us, he would act at once, that the delay is evidence of something missing, some distance, some inattention, some failure in the connection. But the story of Bethany will not allow that reading, because the delay was not inattention. It was intention. He was not on his way and got waylaid. He was exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was doing, for a reason that could not yet be seen from inside the grief of the house in Bethany. And that reason, when it finally showed itself, was larger than the healing they had asked for. They had asked for their brother not to die. He was preparing to make death itself answer his voice. For anyone tonight who has been carrying the weight of a long wait, this story does not offer a timetable. It does not promise that the answer is 2 days away, or 2 weeks, or 2 years. What it offers is something more durable than a timetable. It offers a character. The character of the one who received the message and whose first response was not strategy or theology but love. The same love that has your name in it. The same love that has always been before the delay. The same love that is already holding whatever morning you cannot yet see from inside this particular 2 days. Let that be enough for tonight. It was enough for Martha. She walked back toward him even so. He does not let us misread the delay. He says it plainly almost before the story begins. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. The delay came after the declaration of love, not instead of it. This is the thing about divine timing that cannot be explained with a diagram. It does not look like love from the middle of it. It only looks like love from the other side. And even then, the looking back is not always without tears. The 2 days passed, And whatever Martha and Mary were feeling in those 2 days, whatever prayers rose from that house in Bethany, whatever hours were spent listening for footsteps on the road, we are not told. Scripture is merciful that way. It does not make us linger longer than we can bear. It only tells us what happened next. What happened next is this. Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "Let us go into Judea again." And the disciples were immediately practical. "Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again?" They were not wrong to notice the danger. The road back toward Jerusalem was not a safe road. Going toward Bethany meant going back toward the people who had already tried to end him. Jesus answered them with an image. "A man walking in the day does not stumble. A man walking in the night does." The light had to be followed, even into difficult places, even into places where the welcome would be complicated. And then he said, "Our friend Lazarus sleepeth." And the disciples, still practical, still working with the tools of ordinary logic, said, "Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well." They heard sleep and thought rest. They heard rest and thought recovery. This is what the mind does when it is trying to stay hopeful. It reaches for the ordinary explanation, the one that does not cost as much. Then Jesus said plainly, "Lazarus is dead," and there is no elaboration after that, just the fact. Laid down simply, the way Jesus always laid down hard truths. Without cruelty, without flinching, and yet always with something underneath the statement that the statement alone cannot contain. He said, "And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent ye may believe." That word glad has troubled readers for centuries. It does not mean he was glad for the grief. It does not mean he was unmoved by what the family in Bethany was enduring. What it means is something far harder and far more beautiful. It means he was already holding the whole of the story. He was already standing at the other end of it. And what he could see from there, they could not yet see from here. This is perhaps the most tender thing in the entire passage. Not the miracle, not the tears at the tomb, though those will come, but this small word glad, spoken by someone who is already walking toward the sorrow with the answer folded inside him. He was not unaware of their pain. He was carrying it with him all the way to the door. Thomas, the one who would later need to touch the wounds before he could believe, said something here that deserves to be remembered. He said to the other disciples, "Let us also go that we may die with him." It was not cheerful, but it was loyal. It was the kind of thing a person says when they have already decided that being near Jesus is worth whatever the road brings. Even a road back into danger, even a road that looks like it ends badly. And so they went, the whole company of them, moving back toward Judea, moving toward a village where two sisters were sitting with their grief, not knowing that the one they had sent for was already on his way, had been on his way in a sense, from before the message was ever sent. The road to Bethany is not a long road, 2 miles from Jerusalem, close enough to feel the city, close enough that the sound of it would have carried on the wind on certain days. But on this day the road itself was quiet, and the company that walked it was mostly silent. Because there are things that happen on the way to a house of mourning that do not need words. The walking itself says enough. When Jesus arrived, Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. 4 days. To our ears that detail is simply a measure of time, but to everyone who was standing in Bethany that afternoon, it carried a very specific weight. In the understanding of that world, in the traditions that shaped how Jewish families in first century Judea spoke about death, the 3rd day after burial was significant. There was a belief, held widely among the people of that time and place, that the soul of the departed lingered near the body for 3 days. 3 days of proximity, 3 days in which if a miracle were to come, it would not yet be entirely beyond imagining. The 4th day was different. On the 4th day, that proximity ended. On the 4th day, whatever thread of possibility the first 3 days had kept from snapping, finally released. The stone was not merely closed. It was sealed in the way that the word sealed means when everyone present has agreed that the sealing is final. To arrive in Bethany on the 4th day was to arrive after the last ordinary hope had already quietly departed. not just before healing had happened, after hope itself had been tidied away and put down, and the grief had settled into the long, shapeless weight of the simply permanent. Jesus knew this. He knew the cultural grammar of 4 days as surely as he knew the name he was about to call out loud. He knew that the people standing around that tomb had already passed through the territory of waiting for a miracle and had come out the other side into the territory of learning to live without one. They were not hoping anymore exactly. They were grieving. There is a difference, and the difference matters. Hoping is a posture you can still do something about. Grieving is what happens when you have let go of the doing and begun the long work of carrying. And he walked toward them anyway, toward the 4th day, toward the place where natural hope had already said its last word, and sat down, toward the tomb that everyone present had agreed was finished. He did not arrive before the ceiling, he arrived after it, because what he was about to do required that there be no room left for any other explanation, no recovery, no misdiagnosis, no comfortable middle ground between what had happened and what was about to happen. The 4th day was not a failure of timing. It was the preparation for a testimony that no other timing could have produced. There is something in this for anyone who is sitting tonight with a situation that has moved past hoping into grieving, who is no longer in the aching space of waiting to see what will happen, who has arrived at the 4th day of something, where the stone has been sealed for long enough that even the people who love you most have stopped expecting news. The same Jesus who walked toward Bethany on the 4th day is walking toward whatever is sealed in your life. Not on the 3rd day, when there was still a technical possibility. Not when there was anything left that ordinary hope could do. He specializes in the 4th day, the day after the door has closed, the day the world has finished making its assessment. Because what he does when he arrives is not an improvement on what was, it is something new altogether. And the stone was exactly where he needed it to be. 4 days is a long time in a village, long enough that the house would have filled with people, long enough that the first sharp edge of grief had begun to settle into something more continuous, more shapeless, the kind of grief that is not a single event, but a weather system that has moved in and does not seem to be leaving. Many of the people from Jerusalem had come out to comfort Martha and Mary, and comfort in that world meant presence. It meant sitting with them, not solving anything, just being there. And then someone at the door said, "Jesus is coming," and Martha heard it, and she rose. This is Martha, the one who had once asked Jesus to tell Mary to come help with the serving, the one who was always the one moving. And here she is, moving again, not away from her grief, toward the one she had been waiting for. She went out to meet him on the road before he had even reached the village, and when she saw him, she did not offer pleasantries. She said what was true. "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died." She was not blaming him exactly. She was just telling him what was in her, the way you tell the people you trust, the whole unbeautiful truth of it. But then she said something else, something that makes this woman one of the most remarkable figures in all of the Gospels. She said, "But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee." Even now, after 4 days, after the grief had settled in, after the tomb was sealed and the mourners had gathered, and everything that could be done by human hands had already been done. Even now, she said, even now I believe something is still possible. This is not the faith of someone who has not been broken. This is the faith of someone who has been broken and has not in the breaking let go. There is a difference, and Martha knew the difference, in her body, in the marrow of it by the time she stood on that road. Jesus looked at her and said, "Thy brother shall rise again." And Martha, still working with the tools of her tradition, said, "I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day." She believed in the resurrection. She had been taught it. She held it as a doctrine the way people hold things they have not yet had to carry as experience. And then Jesus said to her what he has been saying ever since. "I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die." Believest thou this? I am the resurrection and the life. Not I will bring the resurrection, not I have come to announce the resurrection. I am it. He did not point to a doctrine. He named himself as the thing the doctrine was trying to describe. Martha said, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. She said it right there on the road, with tears likely still on her face, with the village behind her full of mourners, with everything in her life at that moment pointing away from hope. She said it anyway, and we should not move past that too quickly, because what Martha did on that road was not easy, and it was not small, and it was not the natural result of a person who had been spared the weight of what she was standing in the middle of. She had not been spared anything. She had sat with her brother while he was sick. She had watched him go. She had been in the house for 4 days with the mourners and the grief and the sealed tomb at the edge of the village. And she had sent word to Jesus and heard nothing back for 2 days, and then heard that he was finally on the way and gone out to meet him on the road. And she had said the true thing first. Lord, if thou hadst been here. She did not skip past it to get to the theology. She said the grief out loud to his face. And then from the same mouth, in the same breath, she said, But even now. Even now is a phrase that takes years to earn. You cannot say it convincingly if you have only ever known the answers to come quickly. You cannot say it with the weight it deserves unless you have actually been in the long wait, unless you have sat on the edge of the 4th day and looked at the sealed stone and said it anyway. Even now, even after this, even here, I believe something is still possible. This is what the ancient church called mature faith. Not the faith that has never been tested, not the faith that is kept safe and dry on a shelf where the weather cannot reach it, but the faith that has been caught in the rain more than once, that has been reduced, that has had to ask, honestly and without a performance of certainty, whether any of this is still true, and has come back not with a triumphant shout, but with a quiet and somewhat battered yes. Yes, even now. And then Jesus said something that changed the shape of the conversation entirely. He did not point her toward a doctrine about the resurrection. He did not say, Let me remind you what you were taught about the last day. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. I am, present tense, standing here, on this road, in front of you. Not a system of belief, not a theological framework, not even a miracle in the ordinary sense of something remarkable happening in the world. A person. The thing the doctrine had always been pointing toward was standing on the road in Bethany, dusty from traveling, asking Martha if she believed. This is one of the quiet revolutions of the Christian faith. The resurrection is not primarily an event in the future. It is not primarily something that will happen at the last day to people who have held the correct position on a theological question. It is a person, and the person is here, the same way he was here on the road with Martha, the same way he is here tonight, in this room, in this breath, in the quiet that has settled over this house, while the rest of the world sleeps. When Martha confessed that she believed, she was not signing a doctrinal statement. She was recognizing someone she already knew. She was saying, Yes, I see you. After all of it, after the 2 days and the 4 days, and the sealed stone, and the grief that had made itself at home in her house. I see you standing on this road, and I believe you are who you say you are, not because the evidence all points in that direction. The evidence in that moment pointed mostly toward the tomb, but because something in her recognized something in him that no amount of evidence could either produce or disprove. That kind of faith does not come from never having doubted. It comes from having doubted all the way to the end of what doubt can do, and finding him still there on the other side of it, still on the road, still asking, Believest thou this? And Martha said, Yes. For all of us who have had to say it from the middle of a situation that makes the saying feel almost unreasonable. She said it first, and she said it well, and we can say it after her. She said it anyway. This is what the church has always called confession, not a performance, not a statement for an audience. Just a word spoken to the face of Jesus in the middle of the worst thing you have ever been through. Yes, I believe. Thou art the Christ. And then she went back to the house, quietly. She went to her sister and whispered, The Master is come and calleth for thee. She did not make an announcement. She just passed the word, one sister to the other, the most important news any of us will ever carry. Mary arose quickly when she heard it. She did not walk. She rose and came to him. And the people who were in the house with her, sitting with her in her grief, saw her leave suddenly and followed her. They thought she was going to the tomb to weep, and in a way she was, but she was going to something more than a tomb. She just did not know it yet. When Mary came to where Jesus was, she fell down at his feet. Two sisters, one who met him standing on the road, one who came to him and fell to the ground. Both of them beloved, both of them grief-broken in exactly the same way, both of them saying in the end the same words, and yet arriving at his feet so differently. Martha had stood. She had gone out ahead of everyone. She had met him while he was still on the approach. She had engaged with the theology. She had asked the hard question and then offered the confession and then gone quietly back to tell her sister. This is how Martha loved, with her whole body in motion, with her mind working even in the middle of her grief, with the instinct, even now, to do something. Mary did not stand. Mary fell. She had come quickly, John tells us, not with the measured movement of someone who had composed herself before going out. She had risen from where she was sitting, and she had come. And when she arrived, the posture she found herself in was the posture she had always been in with him, at his feet, on the ground, giving all of what was in her, without any of the architecture of composure. There is something important here for anyone who has ever wondered whether their way of coming to God in grief is the right way, whether they are doing it correctly, whether the God who welcomed Martha's standing conversation on the road would have any patience for the kind of grief that cannot stand, that can only fall, that arrives not with theology ready, but simply with the full, unguarded weight of what has been lost. Mary was not rebuked for falling. Mary was not asked to collect herself before he would address her. She fell, and he received her exactly there, on the ground, in the middle of her tears, in the middle of all the people who had followed her from the house and were now weeping around her. He did not wait for a better moment. The moment she gave him was the moment he used. And something happened in that moment that the gospel records with unusual honesty. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit, and was troubled. This is not a polished response. This is not the God who watches human grief from the safe distance of omniscience. He groaned. Something in him moved at what he was seeing, something in the nature of God, as it had taken on human flesh, and was standing in a crowd of weeping people, on a road outside a village in Judea, was genuinely affected by what the eyes of Jesus saw. This matters more than we usually let it matter, because there is a version of God that we sometimes carry without knowing it, a God who is present but unmoved, who is aware of our grief the way a doctor is aware of a patient's chart, with appropriate knowledge and appropriate competence and appropriate distance. The kind of God who holds our pain without feeling it, because feeling it would somehow diminish the sovereignty of it. But that is not the God of Bethany. The God of Bethany groaned. The God of Bethany was troubled in his spirit at the sight of Mary on the ground, not because he did not know what he was about to do. He knew exactly what he was about to do, but the knowing did not make him immune to the weight of the moment. The love that was already carrying the answer was the same love that was moved by the grief. Both things were true at once. He was troubled and he was purposeful. He was moved and he was moving toward something. He wept and he was already walking toward the tomb. For anyone tonight Who has ever wondered whether God feels the weight of what you are carrying, whether your tears register, whether the kind of grief that cannot stand is received with the same care as the kind that can make a confession on the road? Let Mary on the ground be your answer. He came to where she was. He received her exactly as she arrived, and something in him moved, not in spite of knowing what was coming, alongside it. She was not standing on the road the way Martha had stood. She was on the ground, and she said the same words her sister had said. "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died." The same sentence, spoken from a different posture, spoken from the floor. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. This is not a polished moment. This is not Jesus at a distance, managing the scene with composure. He groaned. Something in him moved at the sight of their grief. Something in him recognized the particular weight of tears wept at a loss that cannot be undone by anything the weeper can do. He asked a question, "Where have you laid him?" He knew where. He had always known where. But he asked. And they said, "Lord, come and see." And Jesus wept. He wept. 2 words, the shortest verse in the English Bible, and perhaps the one that has done more work in more hearts than almost any other sentence in all of Scripture. Jesus wept. Not for lack of knowledge about what was about to happen, not from despair or from fear or from a momentary lapse of trust in his Father. He wept because he was there, because the grief around him was real, because the tears of Mary were real, because the weight of death and loss and the long ache of human sorrow were real, and he did not stand outside that realness. The people standing there saw him weep and said, "Behold how he loved him." And they were right. That was what they were seeing. Love that had taken on enough of our nature to be undone, at least for a moment, by what undoes us. Some of them asked a harder question. Could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man should not have died? It is the question grief always asks. Not where were you exactly, but why did you let it happen at all? Why did the power that was available in other places not come to this place? Why did healing come to strangers and not to someone you called by name? Jesus did not answer that question out loud. He groaned again, and he moved toward the tomb. There is a kind of presence that does not try to answer the question, that just keeps moving, that just keeps coming toward you. This is what Jesus did. He moved through the grief of those around him, not above it, not around it, but through it, and he kept going. Before we follow him to the entrance of that tomb, let us rest with something older, something that echoes this moment from so many centuries before that the echo itself has become part of the sound of God's voice. There is a passage in the 37th chapter of Ezekiel, a vision that came to the prophet in one of the darkest seasons Israel had ever known. "The hand of the Lord was upon me," Ezekiel wrote, "and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the midst of a valley which was full of bones. Full of bones. Not a battlefield still in the chaos of loss, not something recent, something long finished, a valley that had given up expecting anything different from itself. And he caused me to pass by them round about, and behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry, the kind of dry that speaks of time having passed beyond the reach of ordinary hope. And the Lord said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live?" That question, can these bones live? It is not a rhetorical question. God is asking it to the prophet because he wants to see what the prophet will say, because the answer we give to that question tells him something about what we understand of him. And Ezekiel said, "O Lord God, thou knowest." He did not say yes, he did not say no, he said, "You know." And that was the right answer, the only honest answer, the one that puts the question back where it belongs, in the hands of the one who made the bones in the first place. Then God said, "Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Speak to the bones, not describe them, not mourn over them, not explain why they are in the condition they are in. Speak to them. Speak the word of the Lord into the dry place." And as Ezekiel obeyed, there was a noise, and behold a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone, and breath came into them, and they lived, and stood upon their feet, an exceeding great army. This is the pattern of God's working through human history. Not that he ignores what is dry, not that he pretends the valley is other than it is, but that he speaks into it, and the speaking makes it live. The God who breathed life into bones in a valley is the same God who stood outside a sealed tomb in Bethany, the same God who is here, tonight, in this quiet room, watching over whatever in you feels very dry, watching over whatever in you has stopped expecting a different morning. He has not stopped speaking. Back in Bethany, Jesus came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it, and he said, "Take ye away the stone." That instruction was for human hands. There were things that human hands could do and were supposed to do, the unsealing of the entrance, the moving of what had been placed there by grief. Martha, still herself, still thinking practically, even in the middle of this extraordinary moment, said, "Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days." We should not rush past Martha's words here. They are often treated as a small embarrassment in the story. A practical woman momentarily forgetting herself, a brief interruption before the miracle. But Martha's words were not faithlessness. They were honesty. And honesty in God's presence has never been treated as something to be corrected out of existence. It has always been treated as something he can work with. She had been at the tomb. She had helped prepare her brother for burial. She had stood near the cave entrance on the day the stone was rolled across it. She understood, in a way that is entirely physical and entirely human, what 4 days in a sealed place in the summer heat of Judea meant. And when Jesus said, "Take ye away the stone," her first instinct was to protect everyone standing there. The mourners who had come from Jerusalem, the disciples, him. She was still in her grief and in her confusion and in whatever faith she was still holding, being Martha, noticing what the room needed, trying to spare people from something difficult. There is a kind of faith that presents only its best face to God. That says the believing things and leaves the doubting things, the practical objections, the body-level knowledge of what is actually true about this situation quietly aside. And there is a kind of faith that brings all of it, that says, "Lord, I said I believed, and I meant it. And here is also the thing I know with my hands and my memory and the whole weight of these 4 days. Hold both. He can. He always has." Jesus did not tell Martha her concern was wrong. He did not dismiss what she knew. He simply reminded her of something she already had. "Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God?" Not a rebuke, a returning, a gentle hand placed on the shoulder of someone who had briefly looked away from the promise and started looking at the problem. "Come back," he was saying. "Come back to the thing we already agreed on together, on the road before any of this stone and stone rolling had begun. You said you believed. Stay there. You are allowed to know everything you know and still stay there." And they took away the stone. Human hands, doing what human hands were asked to do. This is always part of how God works. He is not looking for people who have no practical knowledge of the difficulty. He is not looking for people who have stopped being realistic about what they are standing in front of. He is looking for people who are realistic about the stone and still willing to put their hands on it. People like Martha, who knew exactly what the situation was and moved the stone anyway, because he asked, and because she had already said even now on the road, and because even now was still true, even here, even at this entrance, even with everything she knew. She was protecting everyone from something painful. She was being realistic in the way that love sometimes has to be realistic. She was not faithless. She was honest. Jesus said to her, "Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God?" Not a rebuke, a reminder, a gentle pulling back to the conversation they had already had on the road. The promise had already been made. She had already said she believed. He was simply inviting her to stay in that place a little longer. And they took away the stone. The story moves quickly here, not because the moment is small, but because the preparation has already been made. All the words have been said, all the tears have been wept, all the waiting has been endured, and now there is only this. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. He prayed first. He did not perform. He did not address the crowd. He looked up and he thanked his Father, even before the miracle was visible, even standing at the entrance of death. And I knew that thou hearest me always, but because of the people which stand by I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. This prayer was not for God's benefit. God already knew. This prayer was for the people standing there, so that when the impossible happened, they would know where it came from. They would know who had done it, and they would believe. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. He cried with a loud voice, not a whisper, not a gesture, a voice, his voice, filling the space around the sealed entrance of that tomb, crossing the threshold that no human voice had any business crossing, calling into the country of the dead, by name, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth. He came out bound with grave clothes, his face wrapped in a napkin. And Jesus said, Loose him and let him go. This is where the story breathes. After all the waiting and the weeping and the groaning and the prayer, it ends simply. He came out, and Jesus said, Loose him, free him from what was wrapped around him, let him go back to the living where he belongs. There are things that need to be loosed. There are grave clothes that were put on for good reason at the time, wrappings of old grief, old identities formed in the middle of loss, things that made sense when everything was shut and sealed and dark. And the voice that called Lazarus out of the tomb is the same voice that says to the people standing nearby, Loose him. Help each other out of what the darkness dressed you in. This miracle was witnessed by many. Some who saw it believed, and some went away and told others, not to celebrate but to report. But those who believed because they had stood in the middle of it and could not explain it any other way. They had seen the sealed stone rolled away. They had heard the voice. They had watched a man bound in burial clothes walk back into the light. The Psalms have always known something about this kind of movement. The movement from darkness toward morning. The movement from the night of weeping toward the morning of something else. David wrote in the 30th Psalm, For his anger endureth but a moment. In his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Weeping may endure for a night, not forever, not always, for a night. The night is real, the weeping is real, but so is the morning. This is not promise that grief is brief. Some nights are very long. Some nights stretch out across months and years and feel less like a season and more like a climate. David knew this. He wrote about it in almost every corner of the Psalter. But he also knew that God's character is toward morning, that the arc of what God does bends toward light, that joy comes, not might come, not could come under the right conditions, cometh. It cometh in the morning. For Mary and Martha, the morning came at the mouth of a cave on the edge of their village. It came in the form of their brother's voice saying something, or his face showing something, or simply the fact of him standing there wrapped in grave clothes in the afternoon sun. The morning did not look like they had imagined it would look. It almost never does. This is the pastoral truth that the raising of Lazarus leaves behind long after the crowds have gone home. Not a doctrine, not a theological proposition, just this. He came. He came to the house of mourning. He came to the sealed place. He came to the place where everyone had agreed that nothing more was possible. And he spoke, and life answered. There is an old pattern in Scripture, older than Bethany, older than the Gospels, that runs through the whole of the story of God's dealings with his people. It is the pattern of the prophet Elijah, a servant of God standing before the impossible, and God moving anyway. In the 17th chapter of 1 Kings, there is a widow in Zarephath. Elijah had been sent to her by God during a famine. She had nothing, a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse, she told him, enough for one last meal for herself and her son before they died. And Elijah said, Fear not. Make me thereof a little cake first, and then make for thee and for thy son. For thus saith the Lord God of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail. And it did not fail, the barrel of meal wasted not, and the cruse of oil failed not. Day after day in the middle of famine, the last thing kept being enough, because God's word had been spoken over it. But then the widow's son fell sick, and his sickness was sore, and he ceased to breathe. And the widow turned to Elijah with the grief of someone who has already had to trust past what she thought she could trust. She said, Art thou come unto me to call my sin to remembrance, and to slay my son? This is what grief does sometimes. It turns toward the person of God and asks whether the suffering is punishment, whether it is earned, whether the one who seemed to bring blessing has also brought this. Elijah took the boy. He carried him up to the upper chamber, and he stretched himself upon the child 3 times, and cried unto the Lord, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come into him again. He prayed, not with beautiful words, with the prayer of someone who has nothing to offer but the request itself. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. And Elijah brought him down and gave him to his mother. And she said, Now by this I know that thou art a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in thy mouth is truth. She had trusted before. She had fed Elijah before the miracle of the oil. But now she said, Now I know. Because some knowing only comes through the thing that felt impossible. Some trust is only forged in the furnace of the story that looked like it was ending. Centuries later, in a village called Bethany, another servant of God stood before what looked like an ending. No, not a servant, the Son, the very Word made flesh. And he too stretched himself toward the dead, not across a body in an upper room, but toward a sealed tomb, with his voice, with a command, and the dead man lived. The pattern is consistent, not because God is limited to a pattern, but because he is not, because he keeps choosing throughout all of human history to be the kind of God who enters the upper rooms and the sealed caves and the valleys full of dry bones, the kind who keeps coming back to the places where his people have run out of their own resources, the kind who speaks when speaking seems pointless and is not surprised when life answers. Psalm 116 holds a verse that has carried generations of believers through their quietest nights. There is a reason this verse has been pressed into so many hands across so many hard hours, read aloud in so many rooms where ordinary words could not reach, carried in the pockets and the memories of so many people across so many seasons. It is not because it is comfortable. It is because it is true in a way that goes all the way down. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Precious, not managed, not processed, not absorbed into the statistics of a universe too large to attend to the particulars of individual lives. Precious. The word in the Hebrew carries the sense of something costly, something that is held with both hands because the holding matters, something that cannot be treated carelessly without something being lost. For anyone in this room tonight who is carrying someone in your heart, whether by distance, by silence, by absence, or by the long ache of love that has had to learn to keep going, this verse is speaking directly to you. Not in the abstract, in the specific. The person you are carrying in your chest tonight, the one whose name you have said more times in the silence than you may have ever said it out loud, that person is precious in the sight of the Lord, was precious before the illness came, was precious in the middle of the difficulty, was precious in the moment of the passing, and is precious still, because preciousness in the sight of God does not expire at the threshold. The raising of Lazarus is a foretaste of something larger. Jesus did not raise everyone who died in Bethany that year. He raised one man in one village on one specific afternoon, for reasons that John makes clear were meant to point to something beyond themselves, that the Son of God might be glorified, that those who were standing there might believe, that the pattern of what God does with death might be displayed for every generation that would ever read the story afterward. But the pattern points somewhere. It points to a morning that is larger than the morning in Bethany. a morning that is not a foretaste, but the thing the foretaste was always tasting of. The resurrection that is not borrowed and temporary, but permanent and complete. The morning when every name that has been carried in the chests of the people who love them is called out loud. By the same voice that called Lazarus, with the same authority, with the same love. For those of us tonight who have not yet had to carry that kind of loss, this verse is still for us, because all of us will one day be the one at the door. And to know, now, in the quiet of this ordinary night, that the door is watched over by one who holds the going through of it as precious, as costly, as something that matters to him beyond what any of us can calculate. That is not a small thing to carry into sleep. It is a great mercy laid over a deep fear. Psalm 116 does not stay only at the graveside. It moves. The psalmist who wrote, "Precious in the sight of the Lord," also wrote, "I love the Lord, because he hath heard my voice and my supplications, because he hath inclined his ear unto me." He bent down to listen. That is the image, the God of the universe, before whom everything is held in the open, bending toward the specific small voice of a specific person in a specific room, inclined, leaning in. Whatever name you are carrying tonight, he is inclined toward it. Whatever grief you have not yet been able to speak out loud, he is already leaning in to receive it. The same ear that heard the voice of the psalmist, the same ear that heard the message from Bethany, the same ear that has been inclined toward his people in every generation and has never once grown tired of what it hears, is inclined toward you, tonight, in this quiet room, now. It is one of those verses that people carry with them in their hardest hours, the kind that gets written down quietly and tucked into pockets and read aloud when no other words will reach. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Precious. The word has weight in the original Hebrew, costly, of great value, not something he regards lightly, not something he watches from a distance with detachment. When one of his beloved ones passes through the door of death, it costs something in the sight of the Lord. He does not manage it the way administrators manage transitions. He holds it as precious. He holds the going through of it as something that matters beyond calculation. This does not take away the grief. It never does, but it places the grief inside a larger truth, the truth that says the one you lost did not leave the sight of God. The one you loved was precious to him before the sickness came, was precious in the sickness, is precious now. And that preciousness does not end at the threshold. For anyone in this room tonight carrying a name in their chest, like a stone, for anyone whose love has had to keep reaching across distance, or silence, or absence, for anyone sitting in the kind of quiet that comes when something is missing, and nothing in the world will quite refill it. Let this word rest over you tonight. Precious in the sight of the Lord. He knows. He has always known. David also wrote in that same psalm, "I was greatly afflicted," not "I was slightly troubled," not "I went through a season of minor difficulty." Greatly afflicted. He knew what it was to be reduced, to be brought down to a place where the ordinary resources of strength and hope and strategy were simply not adequate. And yet he kept speaking. He kept saying in the very next breath, "I love the Lord, because he hath heard my voice and my supplications, because he hath inclined his ear unto me." This is the voice of someone who has been heard, not just someone who believes theoretically in a God who hears, but someone who has been in the affliction and has sent word and has somehow been met. The kind of met that you cannot explain to someone who has not experienced it. The kind that changes the grammar of your praying forever after. The hours of the night move slowly sometimes, especially when the body is tired, but the mind has decided not to cooperate. Especially when the quiet of the house becomes a canvas for everything the daylight had been too busy to display. Old faces, old conversations, things left undone and things left unsaid and things that cannot be made right by any amount of wishing. In those hours, there is something that the raising of Lazarus offers that no amount of theological explanation can offer. It is simply this: he came. He came to the hard place. He did not wait at the edge of it and call across. He walked into the middle of the grief. He stood at the mouth of the cave. He wept with those who wept, and then he spoke. There is another quality to this miracle that deserves to be held. It is the quality of the personal. He did not raise Lazarus as a demonstration. He raised Lazarus because he loved him, because he loved Martha, because he loved Mary, because he looked at a house full of grief, and the love in him could not leave it that way. This is not a God of policy. This is not a God who operates at the level of systems and distributions and statistical outcomes. This is a God who knows which tomb is which, who knows which grave clothes belong to which name, who knows your name the same way he knew Lazarus, and who is not done with you. Think for a moment of what the house in Bethany must have been like in the days after Lazarus came home. The ordinariness of it. Martha probably made food. She was Martha. That is what Martha did when she did not know what else to do. And this time the cooking would have been something different, not out of duty, out of a kind of joy that the hands have to do something with. And Lazarus, sitting at a table, eating, being there again, the presence of someone restored to presence. We do not have his words. We do not have his testimony recorded in the gospel. We only know that he was there, and that being there was enough. Mary must have sat near him. We can imagine that. Mary who fell at Jesus' feet. Mary who grieved extravagantly and loved extravagantly, sitting near her brother in the ordinary evening light of the house they had shared all their lives. Not saying much, just near, because nearness was the thing that had been taken away, and nearness was the thing that had been given back. The disciples who had walked to Bethany with Jesus had come along the road expecting a loss. Thomas had said, "Let us go that we may die with him," and instead they were sitting at a table with a man who had been dead 4 days, and Jesus was among them. And the evening, ordinary as it was, held something in it that none of them would spend the rest of their lives being adequate to describe. This is the shape of what resurrection does. It does not only restore what was lost, it changes the ordinary. It makes the evening table a different kind of table. It makes the sitting near a different kind of nearness. It makes the bread and the lamp and the conversation and the face of the person across from you all carry more light than they carried before. Because you know now, in a way you did not know before, what it is like when they are not there. Let us turn now toward the Psalms, the way the people of God have always turned toward the Psalms when the story has reached a place too large for ordinary words. The 23rd Psalm is so old in most of our memories that we risk hearing it without hearing it. We learned it young. We have heard it at bedsides and gravesides, and in small chapels, and in large congregations, and in the quiet of our own rooms before sleep. And because we know it so well, we sometimes let the familiarity be a kind of glass between us and the actual weight of it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Walk through, not sit down in, not make my permanent residence in. Walk through. The valley is real, the shadow is real, but so is the through. And the through is not achieved by the walker's own strength or strategy. It is achieved by the presence of the shepherd. Thou art with me. That is the whole argument. That is the entire basis for not fearing, not because the valley is not dark, not because the shadow is not shadow, but because I am not alone in it, and the one with me is the one who knows the way out. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The rod and the staff are not decorative, they are tools. The rod for protecting the sheep from what would harm them, the staff for guiding them back when they have wandered, or for steadying them on narrow paths above steep places. This comfort is not the comfort of soft words, it is the comfort of a shepherd who knows what he is doing, whose tools are appropriate to the terrain, who has been on this path before. David wrote this psalm from the inside of having lived it. He was a shepherd before he was a king. He knew what it was to spend the night in a field with a flock and a staff, and the sound of things in the dark that could hurt what he was responsible for. He knew the weight of that responsibility. He knew what it cost. And so when he wrote about God as shepherd, he was not reaching for a convenient metaphor. He was drawing on something he had held in his actual hands. The same David who wrote Psalm 23 wrote Psalm 30. He wrote, "Thou hast turned for me my mourning into dancing. Thou hast put off my sackcloth, and girded me with gladness. Mourning into dancing, sackcloth into gladness. These are not small changes, these are reversals, the kind of reversals that only God can accomplish, because no human effort converts mourning into dancing, no human strategy exchanges sackcloth for joy, only God does that. And David said, Thou hast done it. Past tense. Already it has been done. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. The night is not the end, the morning is coming, and the God who sent it has been sending it since the beginning. In the village of Bethany, the morning came, not metaphorically, not eventually, on a specific afternoon, with a specific stone rolled away, with a specific voice speaking a specific name, and the one who had been bound came out and was loosed and was let go back into his life. This is the miracle we have been sitting with tonight. Not just the event of it, but the meaning underneath the event. The meaning that says, God is not finished. God is not done with the sealed places. God is not standing at a distance from the hard thing in your life. He is walking toward it. He has always been walking toward it. He is walking toward you. The road to Bethany was dusty and ordinary. The disciples were tired and a little afraid. The house they were walking toward was a house of mourning. And Jesus walked the whole road anyway, every step of it, knowing what was waiting at the end, knowing he was going to weep, knowing he was going to be looked at by people who wondered why he had not come sooner. He walked it anyway, because that is what he does. He walks toward what we are in. He does not require us to clean it up first. He does not ask us to compose ourselves before he arrives. He does not send word that he will come when we have reached a more hopeful disposition. He comes to the house as it is, full of mourners, full of the smell of grief, full of people saying, Lord, if thou hadst been here. He comes to that house, and he enters it. This is the comfort that outlasts all the theology, not the argument for why miracles happen, not the framework that explains divine timing, but the simple, undeniable fact that he shows up. That he has been showing up in hard places for as long as hard places have existed. That he is here tonight in this quiet room, in whatever form your particular darkness takes. Present. Near. The grave clothes that Lazarus wore out of the tomb were not ornamental. They were necessary when he went in. Everything that was put on him in the tomb was put on him with love, and with ceremony, and with the appropriate respect for what death requires. But they were not meant to be his permanent clothing. He was meant to be loosed from them. Jesus said, Loose him, and let him go. There are things in us that were appropriate to the season of our loss. The way we closed off. The way we learned to make ourselves smaller. The way we stopped expecting too much so that the disappointment would not be so sharp. These things were not wrong at the time. They were how we survived. But the voice that called Lazarus out of the tomb is not finished calling. Loose him. Let him go. There is more life ahead than behind. This does not mean the grief was not real. It does not mean the loss was not loss. Every name inscribed on every stone in every cemetery is the name of someone who was truly loved, and is truly gone, and is truly missed. The grief is real. God does not minimize it. He wept at the tomb of one man in one village. He weeps still over the losses of all of his beloved. But he does not leave the weeping as the final word. He never has. From Elijah in the upper room to Ezekiel in the valley of bones, from David in the deepest of his psalms to Mary on her knees in the afternoon outside Bethany, he meets the grief. He enters it. He weeps with those who weep. The speaking is not loud. It does not have to be. The voice that called Lazarus forth was a loud voice in that moment because the moment required it. But the voice that speaks over the sleepless nights of his people is quiet, a still small voice, the kind that comes not in the wind and not in the fire, but in the gentle sound of quietness, as Elijah himself learned at the mouth of the cave on Horeb. There on the mountain, burned out and exhausted and hiding, Elijah heard it. After the great wind, after the earthquake, after the fire, a still, small voice, and it was enough. Tonight the same voice is here, not competing with anything, not performing, just present, just speaking. into whatever is sealed in you, into whatever has been shut away so long that the people around it have begun to speak of it in past tense, into whatever in you had started to believe that the morning might not come after all. He is speaking. Can these bones live? Thou knowest, Lord. And he does. He is already speaking over the dry places, already prophesying over the valley, already standing at the entrance of whatever in your life has been sealed away. The stone has already been asked to be removed. Human hands are always part of what God does. He asks people to roll away the stone. He asks people to loose the grave clothes. He works through the ordinary. But the voice is his, always speaking into what no human voice can reach. The church at its best has always known what to do in the presence of this kind of story. It does what Martha did. It gets up and goes out to meet him on the road. It says what is true without prettying it up. It says, Lord, if thou hadst been here. And then in the same breath it says, but even now. That is the confession that the raising of Lazarus invites from anyone who has ever waited. Not the triumphant shout of someone who has never been in the tomb, but the quiet, steady, tear-marked belief of someone who has been in it and has decided that Jesus is still who he says he is. Even now, even after the 4 days, even after the stone was sealed, even now. The house in Bethany must have been different afterward. We do not have the story of how it settled back into its ordinary rhythms. We do not know how Martha cooked differently, or whether Mary sat differently at the feet of Jesus the next time he visited, or what conversations Lazarus had with his sisters in the evenings that followed. The gospel does not give us those details. It gives us the moment, and then it moves on, because there were more moments ahead, larger and more costly, and the story was not finished. But we know that the family of Bethany appears again in John's Gospel. 6 days before the Passover, John tells us, Jesus came again to Bethany, and they made him a supper, and Martha served, and Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him, just sitting, just being at the table, alive. And a woman named Mary took a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. The house was filled, not one room, not the room where Jesus was sitting, the whole house. Every corner of the place where Lazarus had been laid out for burial was now carrying something else, something extravagant and entirely unnecessary by the logic of careful people, something that could not be partially done. Once you break open a sealed jar of spikenard in a room, the room does not stay the same. The fragrance does not observe polite boundaries. It goes everywhere. It fills everything. This is what Mary understood, not as a theological proposition. In her body, in her memory, in the particular knowledge that only comes from having been in the grief all the way to the bottom and having seen what was at the bottom. She had been at the tomb. She had been on the ground at his feet, in the middle of her tears. She had watched her brother walk back out into the light. She knew, in a way she could not have known before any of that, what it meant to have something returned that the world had told her was gone. And that knowing could not stay contained. It had to be poured out. All of it, at once, without calculating whether it was reasonable. A pound of spikenard was not a casual offering. Judas would note, with his particular kind of practicality, that it was worth 300 pence. A year's wages for a working man, kept sealed perhaps for a significant occasion, for a wedding, for a burial, for a moment large enough to deserve it. Mary had decided that this was the moment, that the man at her table who had stood at the entrance of her brother's tomb and spoken his name into the dark was the occasion large enough, that no calculation she could make would argue her out of the pouring. This is what the resurrection does to the ordinary. It does not lift the ordinary out of itself and make it something grand and ceremonial. It changes what the ordinary is made of. Lazarus was at the table, just sitting, just eating, just being present in the way he had always been present. But the sitting was different now. The eating was different. The presence of him was different. Because everyone in that room knew, in their bodies and their memories, what it had been like when he was not there. And now he was. And the ordinary fact of his being there had become something that could not be taken for granted. Not tonight. Not in this house. Not by these people. And the ointment filled the room, and the table had bread and lamplight and conversation. And Martha was serving, because Martha served, because that was how Martha's love moved through the world, through her hands, through the care she took with the ordinary. And Jesus was there, in the middle of all of it, in the middle of the most ordinary possible evening, in the most ordinary possible house, in a small village 2 miles from Jerusalem. And the house was full of something that had no name except the fragrance of what happens when the sealed thing is opened. For anyone listening tonight who is carrying something that does not yet have a name, who knows what it is to keep going through ordinary days while holding something heavier than the day knows about, who carries an absence, or a longing, or an old wound, the way you carry something that has simply become part of the weight you move through the world with. This table in Bethany is for you too. Not because it undoes what is hard, but because it shows the shape of what is coming. The table that will be full, the seats that will be occupied, the house that will be filled, with the fragrance of something too costly and too extravagant to be contained. The same voice that called one name in one village is keeping every name that has ever been loved. And the evening is coming when the ordinary is restored, and the ointment fills the room. And everyone who belongs at the table is at the table, and he is in the middle of it. As he has always been, the house was filled with something costly, with something poured out, with something that could not be held back. Because some things only the people who have been to the tomb and come back through the other side understand, what it means to be extravagant with love. Because you know now what the alternative is. And the ointment filled the whole house. Mary's act of worship filled every room of the place where her brother had died and had been restored. The same house, different now, because something that had been sealed had been opened, and the love that was always in it could not stay contained anymore. This is what the resurrection always does. Not just the final resurrection. Every foretaste of it. Every moment when something sealed is opened. Every moment when something the world had finished with is spoken back into life. It fills the house with something that cannot be easily explained. Something that makes people stand in the doorway and wonder what it is. And the ones who have been through the tomb know. It is the smell of what happens when he speaks and life answers. There is a mercy in the fact that we do not always know the details ahead of time. Mary and Martha did not know, when they sent word to Jesus, that he was going to delay. They did not know when he delayed that the delay was for something larger than what they were asking for. They asked for healing. They received resurrection. The answer was bigger than the prayer, and the answer could only be as big as it was because of the waiting, because of the 4 days, because of the stone that was sealed all the way. We do not always know what we are asking for when we ask. We do not always know what the answer is going to require. We do not have the view of the whole story that he has. We see the 2 days of delay and wonder if he is coming at all. He sees the morning that is already written, and he is already walking toward it. There are people tonight who have been praying for someone for a very long time. A child who has wandered, a body that has not healed the way the doctors hoped it would, a marriage that has been strained past what seemed bearable, a loneliness that has gone on so long that the praying for it has become more like a habit than a hope. The message that was sent to Jesus was, "Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick." He heard it, he received it, and he moved, not on the timeline that Martha and Mary would have chosen, but on the timeline that led to the most complete answer possible. Your word has been received. Your message has been heard. The one you love is known by name. And he who could not stay away from Bethany when Lazarus was in the tomb cannot stay away from what you are carrying either. He is already on the road. He has always been on the road. The night is deep now. The room is quiet. Whatever noise the day brought has settled. The street outside is still. And in the stillness, there is a presence that does not announce itself loudly. It does not need to. It was here before you lay down, and it will be here when you rise. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thou art with me. In this room, in this night, in whatever is sealed and waiting. Thou art with me. The house in Bethany was full of mourners, and then it was full of something else. And the something else began with a stone rolled away, and a voice, and a name called out into the dark, and an answer. The same voice that called Lazarus is calling tonight, not loudly, not with great ceremony, but in the quiet that you have given it access to by lying down and letting the day go, and trusting that there is a God who is awake when you are not. Come forth. That is what he said at the entrance of the tomb. Come forth out of the dark, out of the binding, out of the place that has held you too long. Come into the light where I am. Come back to the table where your people are. Come into the morning that is already on its way. Tonight, let him say it over you, not as a summons, as an invitation. The same voice, the same tenderness, the same love that could not leave Bethany alone. Come forth into rest. Come forth into peace. Come forth into the sleep of someone held by the one who holds the morning. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. He is keeping watch. He was keeping watch in Bethany when the tomb was sealed. He was keeping watch in Zarephath when the widow's son stopped breathing. He was keeping watch over the valley of dry bones. He was keeping watch in the upper room. He was keeping watch in the garden. He was keeping watch at the empty tomb on the third morning. He is keeping watch here, over this room, over this night, over whatever you carried to bed with you that you could not put down before your head touched the pillow. Let it be put down now, not by your own effort. You have tried that. Just let your hands fall open, and let what you were holding leave with the breath. He will catch it. He catches everything his people release to him. Nothing falls that he does not receive. The morning is coming. We do not know what it will hold, but we know who holds it, and that is enough. It has always been enough. Martha found it enough on the road when she could not see past the tomb. She said, "Even now," and kept walking toward him. Even now is always enough. Even now he is here. Even now the stone can be moved. Even now the voice can speak into the sealed place. This is the old faith. This is the faith of the psalmist and the prophet and the widow and the grieving sisters and every person who has ever sat in a pew on a Sunday morning and not known how to hold what the week had given them, and came anyway, and sang anyway, and heard the word anyway, and found in the hearing that something had been loosened, something had been freed, the grave clothes had been taken off, one by one, in the act of simply being present where the word was being spoken. This is that place. Right here, right now, this is where the word is being spoken, and it is speaking over you. The night holds no threat for the one who is held by the shepherd. The dark holds no permanent claim over the one whose name is known by the one who called Lazarus. The sealed places do not stay sealed when he comes to them. He always comes, and he always speaks. The scriptures have been carrying this hope for as long as the scriptures have existed, not as theory, not as argument, as testimony. The pattern of God speaking and life answering runs through every season of his dealings with his people. And tonight, before the long quiet of sleep settles all the way down, let the word itself rest beside you for a little while longer. Not as study, not as instruction, just as company. The same way a familiar voice in the next room is company to a child who is almost asleep, already half held by the dark, already trusting that the house is being watched over by someone who is awake. Listen, then, to what the Lord himself said on the last night he spent with his disciples. In the 14th chapter of John, a few short days after he had come to Bethany, a few short days after he had stood at the tomb, a few short days after Lazarus had walked out into the afternoon sun, they were at a table, his disciples around him, bread broken between them, and he knew what was about to happen. He knew the hour was almost here. He knew that the same crowds who had heard about Lazarus and come out to see him would soon be shouting another name in another courtyard. He knew the weight that was coming. And in that knowing, his first impulse was not to brace himself. It was to comfort them. Let not your heart be troubled. That is how he began. Let not your heart be troubled. These are the words of a man who knew exactly how troubled hearts can get. He had seen Mary on the ground. He had seen Martha on the road. He had wept at the tomb of his friend. He knew the texture of human grief in his own body, and he spoke into it, not from a distance, from the table, with bread in his hands. Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house are many mansions. Other translations say rooms. Other translations say dwelling places. The word in the original carries the sense of a permanent abode, not a stopover, not a temporary shelter, a place where you belong, a place where the door knows your name, a place that is being kept. If it were not so, I would have told you. This is one of the most tender sentences in the New Testament. He is saying, I would not let you believe a comforting thing if it were not true. I would not let you walk towards something that was not really there. If it were not so, you would already know. I would have told you. The truth was small enough and honest enough to be told. And the truth is this. There is a place. It is being prepared. It is being prepared by Him. And the preparing is for you specifically. I go to prepare a place for you. He is the one preparing it, not arranging for someone else to prepare it, not delegating the preparing to angels, doing it Himself. The same hands that broke the bread that night, the same hands that touched the eyes of the blind, the same hands that would, within hours, be pierced for the love of the world. Those hands are the hands that are preparing the place. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. I will come again, not maybe, not if the conditions are favorable. I will come and receive you. The word receive there carries the sense of welcome, of being brought home by someone who has been waiting at the door. The same way a father waits at the door for a child who has been a long time away. He will not just see you arrive. He will receive you. He will welcome you in. That where I am, there ye may be also. This is the promise that has carried the church through every century of its grief, through the Roman amphitheaters, through the long centuries of plague, through the sleepless nights of mothers waiting for word from sons in distant wars, through hospital corridors in cities that had not yet been built when the words were spoken, through tonight, through whatever room you are in, whatever name you are carrying, whatever loss is sitting just behind your breath, waiting to surface when the quiet gets quiet enough to let it. That where I am, there ye may be also. Not where I was, not where I will be, where I am, always present tense with Him. The future tense and the present tense fold into each other in His mouth. He is already there. The place is already prepared, and the only journey left is the one He will accompany you on personally. I will come again and receive you unto myself. You will not walk that road alone. You have never had to walk any road alone. You will not start now. And whither I go ye know, and the way ye know. Thomas said unto Him, Lord, we know not whither Thou goest, and how can we know the way? Thomas again, honest, plain-spoken Thomas, the one who would soon need to touch the wounds, the one who could not pretend to know something he did not know. We do not know where you are going. And Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father, but by me. I am the way. Not I will show you the way, not I will draw you a map. I am it. The same I am who said, I am the resurrection and the life, on the road outside Bethany. The same I am who would soon say, I am the vine, ye are the branches. The same I am who is, even now, in the room with you. He is the way. To walk toward him is to be walking the way. To trust him is to be on the road already. There is no separate path. There is no detour that takes you to a better destination. There is him, and he is the road that leads home. Let this rest with you a little longer. There is a house. It is being kept. It is being prepared. He is preparing it. He will come. He will receive you. The way is himself, and the way is already underneath your feet. Peace I leave with you, he said next. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. My peace, not borrowed peace, not the kind of peace the world hands out when it has run out of better things to offer. His peace, the peace that was in him when he slept in the boat in the middle of the storm, the peace that was in him when he walked to Bethany knowing what was waiting, the peace that was in him at the table that night, knowing what the morning would bring. That peace, he is giving it to you, tonight, freely, the way someone hands a coat to someone standing in the cold. Now turn, in the slow quiet of this hour, to the very last book the Lord gave to his people through the Apostle John, the book of the Revelation. Not the parts that have alarmed so many readers across the centuries, not the symbols, not the trumpets, but the chapter near the end, the chapter that has been read at more bedsides in the hour of death than perhaps any other passage in the New Testament. The 21st chapter, where John was given to see something larger than grief, larger than illness, larger than the silence in a house where someone is missing. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. A new heaven and a new earth, the whole creation made over, not patched, not repaired, made new, the way a sealed tomb is not repaired but answered, the way a body bound in grave clothes is not improved but loosed and let go, made new. No more sea. In the language of the first century, the sea was the place of chaos, the place where the storms came from, the place where the deep things hid. No more. Whatever has been the sea in your life, the place the storms came from, the place the deep things hid, will be gone. There will be only the new earth, and on it, the city. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. The city was prepared, the same word again, prepared, adorned, made ready, coming down. The direction matters. It is not us climbing up toward it. It is the city coming down toward us. The way Jesus came down the road to Bethany, the way he has always come. The bridegroom does not wait for the bride to find him. He comes to her. He has always come to her. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. The tabernacle of God is with men, not above them, not outside them, with them. The same with that has run through every promise he has ever made. I will be with you. Lo, I am with you always. Thou art with me. Emmanuel, God with us. And here at the end of a long story, the with is complete. God himself with them, and he shall be their God, and they shall be his people. The relationship that was the point of all of it, restored. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. Wipe away, not stop the tears from forming, not prevent the grief, not skip past it as though it never happened. Wipe them away. The image is of a hand, his hand, the same hand that lifted up Peter when he was sinking, the same hand that broke the bread for the 5,000, the same hand that was pierced for the love of the world. That hand, wiping the tears from your face, one by one, in the unhurried way that someone wipes the tears of a child who has been crying for so long that the crying has become almost involuntary, wiping them away, until there are no more, until the face is dry, until the salt has been cleaned from the cheeks, until the breath comes evenly again. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. For the former things are passed away. No more death. Read those words again slowly. The death that took your mother, the death that took your father, the death that took the friend whose name you have been carrying like a stone, the death that hovered over the bedside you sat by, hour after hour, listening to the breathing change, the death that has gathered up so many you loved that you sometimes stopped counting because the counting was its own kind of grief. No more. No more death, the thing that has shaped so much of the human story, the thing that stood at the entrance of Bethany, the thing that sealed the stone, the thing that wrapped Lazarus in grave clothes. That thing will not have the final word. It has already been told its ending, and the one who told it is the one who is sitting at the table with us still. Neither sorrow nor crying, the sorrow that has weighted your steps for years, the crying that has happened so often in the dark that you stopped expecting anyone to hear it. These will pass. These will be done. These will be among the former things that are passed away. Not because they did not matter. They mattered. He felt them. He counted them. He wept with you. But they will not be the architecture of the world that is coming. They will be the things that were, the things that have ended, the things that did not, in the end, define what was real. Neither shall there be any more pain. The pain in your body that has worn you down so long you have almost made peace with it. The pain in your heart that you do not know how to put into words. The pain you carry that no one else seems to see. No more, for the former things are passed away. The pain was not the truest thing about you. The pain will pass. He is making all things new. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. I make, present continuous. He is making. He has been making. He is already making. The new is not waiting for some far-off cosmic moment. The new has been beginning since Bethany, since the empty tomb, since the first morning that he walked out into the garden and Mary thought he was the gardener. He is making all things new. And the making is already underway, tonight, in you, in the quiet of this room, in the breath that is moving more slowly now. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful, true, faithful. This is one of the few places in Scripture where the word being spoken is so important that the angel commands it to be written down. Write, because people will need to read this. People in every century will need to read this. People in rooms exactly like the one you are in tonight will need to read this. Write it, so that when they cannot remember anything else, they can remember this. He is making all things new. There will be no more death. There will be no more pain. The tabernacle of God will be with men, and God himself will be their God. And he said unto me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. It is done. The same words he spoke from the cross. It is finished, paid in full, brought to completion. The work is done. Not nearly done, not done as far as could be reasonably expected. Done. The morning is not in question. The new is not in question. The wiping away of tears is not in question. It is done. The only thing left is for it to be unfolded into time, and the unfolding is also being done by him. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely, freely, without cost to you, without earning, without proving, freely. If you are thirsty tonight, he is the one with the water. If you are dry tonight, he is the one with the fountain. If you have been thirsty for so long that you have forgotten what it is to be quenched, he is offering you a drink, freely. Just the asking is enough. just the holding out of your cup, and the water is poured, and it does not run out. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. This is the inheritance. This is the deed. This is the agreement signed in the blood of the Lamb and sealed by the Spirit and written down by the apostle, so that there could be no mistake. He will be your God. You will be his son, his daughter, his own. The relationship that began in the garden, when he walked in the cool of the day looking for Adam. The relationship that he never gave up on through every long century of human running and human forgetting. The relationship that he came to Bethany to demonstrate. The relationship that he died and rose to make permanent. You will be his, and he will be yours, and the inheriting will be all things, not nothing, not a small portion. Let these words rest in you tonight. You do not need to remember them all. The word does its own work in the soul that is open to it. It does its work even when the mind is too tired to track the meanings. It does its work in dreams. It does its work in the silences between thoughts. It does its work in the breath that is slowing down even now. And turn one more time, before sleep takes you, to the 8th chapter of Romans, to the words the Apostle Paul wrote from somewhere in the middle of his own long road of suffering. Words he wrote not from a place of comfort, but from a place of having been beaten and shipwrecked and imprisoned and afflicted past what he thought he could bear. These are the words of a man who had earned the right to say what he was about to say, a man who had been to his own version of Bethany many times, a man who had stood in his own valley of dry bones, a man who had been told he was going to die more than once, and had decided that what he had received from the Lord was worth saying anyway. What shall we then say to these things? That is how he opened the question. If God be for us, who can be against us? If God be for us, read that slowly. If God be for us, not if God tolerates us, not if God is willing to overlook us. If God be for us, on our side, in our corner, working for our good, who can be against us? The answer is implied. No one. Nothing that has any final power. Nothing that can change the verdict. If God be for us, the for is the loudest word in the sentence, and it never grows quieter. He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? He did not spare his own son. That is the strongest argument in the entire letter. If he gave up the most precious thing he had for you, what would he hold back now? What lesser thing would he withhold? If the gift of the Son has already been given, every smaller gift is implied in the giving. How shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Freely. Again, freely. The word keeps appearing, because the heart of God toward his people is not stingy, has never been stingy, is not going to begin being stingy tonight. Freely give us all things. Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? Who? He is daring the universe to find an accuser. Who shall lay a charge? Who has the standing? Who has the evidence? Who has the authority? It is God that justifieth. The judge has already ruled. The ruling is in your favor. Who is he that condemneth? Who? Who is in a position to condemn? It is Christ that died, yea rather that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of God, who also maketh intercession for us. He is right now interceding. This very moment, while you are lying here listening, he is at the right hand of God speaking your name, speaking on your behalf, asking for what you need, bringing you before the Father not as a defendant, but as a beloved. This is what he is doing right now. There has never been a moment since the resurrection when he stopped doing it. There will not be a moment tonight when he pauses. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? That is how he asked it. He did not list reasons we might have feared we were separated. He just asked, who shall separate us? as though the answer were so obvious that even asking it was almost rhetorical. Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? He named the worst things he could think of. He named the things that had actually happened to him. He named the things that had happened to the churches he had served. He named the things that had filled the prisons of the Roman Empire with believers. Tribulation, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, sword, each one a real thing, each one a thing that had separated people from their homes, from their families, from their bodies, from their lives. Did these things separate them from the love of Christ? Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. More than conquerors, not merely surviving, not merely getting through, more than conquerors. The word there is so strong that translators have argued for centuries about whether anything in English can quite carry its weight. Hyper-conquerors, over-conquerors, conquerors in a way that goes beyond what the word conquerors normally means. Through him that loved us, through him, not by our own strength, not by the staying power of our own resolve, through him. The love is the engine, the love does the work. The love carries us through the tribulation. The love wraps around us in the distress. The love is closer than the persecution. The love feeds us in the famine. The love clothes us in the nakedness. The love steadies us in the peril. The love bears the sword for us. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. I am persuaded, not I hope, not I suspect, not I would like to believe. I am persuaded. This is the language of someone who has worked the question out all the way to the bottom, who has tested it against every possible counter-argument his mind could generate, who has held it up against the worst the world has done to him, and has come out on the other side persuaded. Neither death nor life. He starts with the two biggest categories, the two great pillars between which everything else stands. Neither death. Death cannot do it. The same death that came to Lazarus, the same death that is so often in the chest of the people we love, the same death that has visited every family that has ever existed. It cannot separate you from the love of God. It does not have that power, it never has, nor life. The complications of being alive cannot do it either. The mistakes you have made cannot do it. The relationships that have broken cannot do it. The years that feel wasted cannot do it. The diagnoses cannot do it. The estrangements cannot do it. The disappointments that have shaped your view of yourself cannot do it. Life cannot separate you from the love of God any more than death can. Nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers. The unseen world cannot do it. Whatever is in the air that you cannot see, whatever spiritual forces have arrayed themselves against the people of God in every age, they cannot do it. Their reach does not extend that far. The love of God in Christ Jesus is in a place they cannot get to. Nor things present, nor things to come. This is the one we often need most. The thing that is happening right now. The thing that is coming next. The thing that you are worrying about tonight, even though you have told yourself 100 times to stop worrying about it. Things present cannot do it. Things to come cannot do it. The future you are afraid of cannot do it. The present you are inside of cannot do it. Neither one has the authority to remove you from the love of God. Nor height, nor depth. The highest places, the lowest places. The mountaintops where you have stood for a moment and seen far. The valleys where you have walked for years and seen almost nothing. Neither height nor depth can do it. Neither the celebrations nor the descents. Neither the moments of joy nor the moments of sinking. The love of God is at the same depth as you are. It is at every height you are at. It is the one constant variable through every shifting season of your life. nor any other creature. In case the apostle missed anything, in case there was some category he had not yet thought of, nor any other creature. Nothing that has been created, nothing that exists, nothing that could exist, can separate you from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus, our Lord. Let that be the last word of the reading tonight. Nothing can separate you. Not the day that just ended, not the night that you are inside of, not the morning that is coming, not the diagnosis you are afraid to hear, not the call you are dreading, not the silence in the room next door, not the absence that you have been carrying. Nothing can separate you from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus. The word has been spoken now. It has done its work in being heard. It does not require your understanding to do that work. It does not require your strength. It does not require your composure. It does its work the way bread does its work when the body receives it, quietly, underneath the noticing, becoming part of what you are made of. And there is one more scripture, older than all the others we have read tonight, that has been pressed into the pillows of God's people for so many centuries that the words themselves have almost become part of the texture of sleep. The 91st Psalm, the psalm that was prayed over soldiers going into battle, the psalm that was prayed over the sick in the long nights of fever, the psalm that has been whispered over cribs, the psalm that has been read at deathbeds, the psalm of dwelling, the psalm of being kept. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. The secret place, a place known to God and to the one who has come there. Not a public place, not a place that requires anyone else's permission to enter. A secret place where you are alone with Him, where the noise of the world cannot follow you, where the demands of the day have to wait at the door. You are in that place now. You have been in it longer than you knew. The lying down was an entering. The slowing of the breath was an entering. The release of the day was an entering. You are in the secret place of the Most High, and under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Refuge, a place to run to when the weather turns. Fortress, a place that holds when everything around it is shaking. My God, the personal possessive, not a God, not the God, my God, in Him will I trust. This is the language of someone who has practiced trusting through enough storms to know that the fortress holds. It does not collapse under the weight. It does not need to be propped up by the faith of the one inside. It holds, because it is His. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His feathers, the image is of a hen with her chicks underneath her, the kind of covering that is warm and soft and complete, the kind of covering that the chick does not have to hold on to. The wings hold themselves over the chick. The chick only has to be still, only has to stay near, only has to let the warmth do what the warmth does. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Truth, His truth. Not the truth as you understand it on a hard day. Not the truth as you might be able to argue for it on a difficult night. His truth. The truth that exists whether you can feel it or not. That truth is the shield over you, the buckler in your hand, the thing that turns away what would otherwise harm you. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Not afraid, not because there is nothing to fear in the world. There is, but because the one who has set Himself over you is greater than what you would have feared. The terror by night, the psalmist names it. He knows about the terror that comes in the night, the thoughts that surface when there is nothing to distract from them, the fears that are louder in the dark than they are in the day, the grief that you held off all afternoon and that has finally caught up with you now that there is nothing else to do. The terror by night. He has named it, and He has set Himself over it. Thou shalt not be afraid, not because the night has become less night, but because the one who is keeping you is sleepless. Nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. The threats of every hour, the hidden ones, the visible ones, the slow ones, the sudden ones. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. Habitation, the place you live, not the place you visit, the place you have moved into. You have moved into him, you have made him your address. This is your home now, and in this home, nothing comes near you that he has not already received first. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. His angels, he has put them on watch. Over the doors, over the windows, over the road in front of the house, over the sleep of his people. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. He has thought of the stones. He has thought of the small dangers that you yourself might not have noticed. He has not left anything to chance. The keeping is thorough. The keeping is complete. The keeping is being done right now. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. This is God speaking now. The psalm shifts in his mouth. He hath set his love upon me. That is the qualification. That is the only one. Not that the person has been perfect. Not that the person has earned anything. He hath set his love upon me. He has chosen to love me. He has decided that this is the one he loves. And in response, God says, I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. To know his name is not to know the letters. It is to know who he is, to know the texture of his mercy, to know the steadiness of his character, to have walked with him long enough to know the way he moves. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. I will be with him in trouble, not I will keep him out of trouble. Not I will arrange his life so that no trouble touches him. I will be with him in trouble. The with again, the same with that ran through Bethany, the same with that ran through every promise. I will be with him. That is the answer. That is always the answer. With long life will I satisfy him, and shew him my salvation. Satisfy. The word in the Hebrew has the sense of being filled, of having enough, of being so completely supplied that there is no longing left for what was missing. Satisfied, not merely sustained, not merely kept alive. Satisfied. And shew him my salvation. I will show him. I will let him see it. I will not keep my salvation in a place where he cannot find it. I will hold it out to him. I will put it in his hand. I will let him taste it and know it. 4 voices have spoken over you tonight. The voice of Jesus at the table, saying, let not your heart be troubled. The voice of John on the island, writing down what he had been given to see. The voice of Paul from somewhere in the middle of his suffering, persuaded. The voice of the psalmist, dwelling in the secret place, kept under the shadow of the Almighty. 4 voices, 1 song, and the song is that you are held, that the place is prepared, that the tears will be wiped, that nothing can separate you, that the one who walked to Bethany has been walking toward you all along. Let the word fold itself around you the way a blanket folds around someone who has been cold for a long time. Let it cover what needs to be covered. Let it warm what has been cold. Let it stay with you through the night. When you turn in your sleep, it will still be there. When the night is at its deepest and the world is at its quietest, it will still be there. When the first light of morning begins to find its way to the window, it will still be there. The word does not leave. It cannot leave. It is the thing that holds the night together for the people who belong to Him. Rest now. The story has been told. The word has been laid down beside you like a hand on your shoulder. The God who walked to Bethany is here. He walked every step of that road, knowing what was waiting. He walks every step toward you, knowing what is waiting too, and He is not afraid of it. And He is not finished. Let the weight of this night fall off you. Let your breathing slow. Let your hands rest open, the way a person rests when they are being taken care of. Because you are. You have always been. The one who wept at the tomb of a friend is the one watching over your sleep tonight. That same love, that same presence, that same faithfulness that did not look like faithfulness for 4 days, and then turned out to have been faithfulness all along. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of His saints. How much more precious, then, is the living of His saints? The breathing, the sleeping, the waking, the long ordinary days between the mountaintops. The mornings when the sackcloth comes off and the dancing begins. All of it precious, all of it held, all of it known by name. By Him, only by Him, always by Him. The village of Bethany is very quiet now. The mourners have gone home. The stone that was rolled away has been left where it was rolled to. The grave clothes are in the cave where someone laid them gently, the way you lay aside something that was necessary and is no longer needed. The house has lamplight in its windows, and inside there's the sound of a family sitting together. Simply that. The ordinary, irreplaceable, almost unbearably ordinary sound of people who love each other, sitting together, not needing it to be anything more than what it is. That is the gift at the end of this story. Not the drama, not the gasps of the crowd, not the theological implications, just the house with the lights on, just the family at the table, just the presence of the one who was absent, now present again. The ordinary restored, made extraordinary by having been lost and found. And Jesus, who had wept and called and commanded the stone away, was at the table with them. With Lazarus, who had come back from somewhere none of them could follow him to. With Martha, who had kept her faith on the road even when her grief was louder than her faith. With Mary, who had fallen at His feet and given everything she had. They were all there, together, as they had been before, as they would be in some form always. Because what He restores with care, and what He keeps, He keeps. This is how the night ends. Not with a trumpet, not with a shout, with a table, with lamplight, with the company of those who love each other, and with Him in the middle of it, as He has always been, in the middle of everything that matters to the people He loves. Let your eyes close now. Let the room hold you. Let the word that was spoken tonight settle into whatever it was meant to reach. There is no need to understand all of it. There is no need to catalog the implications. Just let it rest in you. The way the bread rested in the 12 baskets after the feeding, more remaining than there was when we began. He is here, the one who wept and spoke and called life back into what had been sealed. He is here tonight, in this room, in this breath, watching, keeping, speaking the same word He has always spoken over the ones He loves. Come forth into rest. Come forth. You are held, you are known, you are loved. The night is quiet now, and you can rest. Nothing is left to carry, nothing to answer, nothing to solve before morning. You have been in good company tonight. The company of Martha and Mary on the road. The company of the disciples who walked toward the hard place anyway. The company of every believer who has ever said, even now, and meant it. If tonight brought you something you needed, we would love to know. Leave a word in the comments. Tell us where you are listening from tonight, or share the name of someone who needs prayer, and this community will carry it. We pray for one another here, and no prayer left in these comments goes unread. Sleep now. You are held. The one who called Lazarus by name knows your name too. He is not sleeping. He is not far. He is as close as the breath that is moving in you right now. Good night.